I understand. My license is right here.
I'm a contractor with the city, running diagnostics on this laptop.
Sir, I'm with the FBI. That's my badge right there. Yeah. Sure you are. Wallet down. Step out of the vehicle. Now. Red and blue lights tore through the darkness of an empty industrial block, washing the night in flashes of authority. What began as a routine police check would end with a federal agent forced against a car. His credentials ignored, his equipment seized, and a local officer unknowingly setting off a chain reaction that would destroy his career. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't miscommunication. This was assumption followed by escalation. At unsprezece patruzece she shapte p.m. in Ridgeway Crossing, Aurora, Colorado. An unmarked sedan sat quietly near a row of closed warehouses. The engine idled. The windows were dark. Inside the vehicle, a black man sat alone. Hands visible. Calm. Compliant. To the officer approaching, that was all that mattered. Out of the car, the officer barked. You want to do this the easy way? Or do you want to get dragged? The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. I'm on federal duty, he said evenly. You need to call your supervisor. The response came instantly. I said out. Now. Within seconds, a lawful federal operation was interrupted. Body cameras were rolling. Dash cams were recording. And a line had already been crossed long before anyone bothered to verify who this man really was. Before we go any further, comment where you're watching from. And make sure you're subscribed. Because what happens next isn't about a traffic stop. It's about power and what happens when it's used on the wrong person. The unmarked sedan hadn't been circling. It hadn't been hiding. It had been parked exactly where it was supposed to be. Inside the vehicle, the dashboard glowed faintly from a laptop, balanced carefully on the driver's lap. Multiple video feeds streamed across the screen, a warehouse entrance, a side alley, a service door partially hidden behind a loading dock. This wasn't surveillance in theory. This was surveillance in progress. A small dash-mounted camera quietly recorded movement at the target location. Another encrypted feed transmitted in real time to a remote federal operations center. Every device inside the car was government-issued, logged, and authorized. The man behind the wheel was Darius Colmore, a senior FBI surveillance specialist assigned to a joint federal task force. 10 years in the field. Counterintelligence support. Mobile tracking. Long hours spent waiting in silence so others never noticed he was there. When the patrol lights flared behind him, Colmore did exactly what his training demanded. He stopped typing. He removed his hands from the keyboard. He placed them clearly on the steering wheel where they could be seen. No sudden movements. No raised voice. No resistance. Through his earpiece, an analyst monitoring the same feeds quietly asked if everything was okay. Colmore didn't answer. He already knew the priority had shifted. The operation was no longer the most dangerous thing happening that night. The officer walking toward his window was... Darius Colmore wasn't new to this. He was 38 years old, a senior surveillance specialist with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. More than a decade in federal field operations. Long nights in unmarked vehicles. Silent hours watching screens. Tracking movements. Documenting patterns most people never see. His job wasn't confrontation. It was precision. Everything inside the sedan had been issued through proper federal channels. The laptop, the cameras, the encrypted transmission equipment, each item logged, each serial number tied to an active case. Colmore was assigned to a joint task force, monitoring a subject connected to a larger federal investigation. The warehouse across the street wasn't random. It was part of a chain. Tonight's surveillance window was critical. When the officer's flashlight flooded the interior of the car, Colmore didn't flinch. He didn't reach for anything. He kept his hands visible and spoke clearly. "Officer, I'm on federal duty. I'm conducting surveillance. My credentials are in my jacket." It wasn't a claim. It was a statement of fact, and one that could be verified in seconds. But verification requires restraint. And restraint requires a willingness to believe that not everyone you stop is lying. The officer didn't ask to confirm. He didn't request a supervisor. He saw a black man, alone, late at night, surrounded by equipment, and decided that was explanation enough. In that moment, the badge in the officer's mind mattered more than the badge Colmore carried. And that decision would change everything. The officer standing at the driver's window was Caleb Hargreave, 44 years old, 15 years with the Aurora Police Department. A veteran by department standards. A man who believed experience gave him intuition, and intuition gave him authority. Among some coworkers, Hargreave was known for being aggressive during stops. Direct. Confrontational. Especially in neighborhoods he labeled as high risk. Especially when the driver didn't look like someone he thought belonged there. His name had surfaced more than once in internal complaints tied to racial profiling and excessive suspicion. Each time, the outcome was the same. No termination. No serious discipline. Just paperwork and another shift on the street. That history mattered, because it taught Hargreave a dangerous lesson that his judgment would be backed, even when it crossed the line. As he stood beside the unmarked sedan, flashlight cutting through the interior, he didn't see a federal agent performing authorized surveillance. He saw a challenge to his control. "That's a lot of equipment," he said, angling the light toward the laptop and camera mounts. "Looks like you're running something illegal." Colmore stayed calm. "It's government issued. You can verify it with one call." Hargreave shook his head. "I've heard every excuse in the book." In his mind, this stop was already resolved. The story had been written before the first question was asked. And from that moment on, procedure stopped guiding the encounter. Ego did. Hargreave didn't ask follow-up questions. He didn't request verification. Instead, he made a decision. Step out of the vehicle. Slowly. Colmore took a breath. He shifted his weight carefully and opened the door just enough to comply. The laptop on his lap tilted slightly as he moved. "Don't move," Hargreave snapped. His voice suddenly louder. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "I'm complying," Colmore said calmly. "The computer is sliding." That explanation didn't matter. Hargreave yanked the door fully open and grabbed Colmore's arm, pulling him out of the seat and turning him toward the trunk. "That's not necessary." Colmore said, "I've already identified myself." Hargreave pressed him forward. "Face the car. Spread your feet." As Colmore placed his hands on the trunk, Hargreave leaned in close and muttered a line that would later echo through an internal affairs report. "You people always say that." Colmore froze, not physically, but mentally. "What do you mean by you people?" he asked. There was no answer, only pressure. Hands pushed higher, feet forced wider. Hargreave looked past Colmore, back into the vehicle. At the screen still glowing in the dark. "Too much tech for someone just sitting around," he said again. "Looks like you're running something illegal." "It's federal surveillance gear," Colmore replied. "You're interfering with a lawful operation." Hargreave didn't hear that as a warning. He heard it as defiance. And in his mind, Defiance had only one response. The handcuffs came out without another word. "You're being detained," Hargreaves said, already pulling Colmore's arms behind his back. "For what?" Colmore asked. "I've done nothing unlawful." Hargreaves didn't answer. He forced Colmore forward, pressing his chest hard against the cold metal of the trunk. The cuffs snapped shut, tight and fast. "Relax your shoulders," Hargreaves said. "You're tense. Makes you look guilty." "I'm not resisting," Colmore replied, breathing steadily. "You need to verify my identity. Now." Hargreaves ignored him. He began a pat-down that quickly crossed from precaution into aggression. Hands moved hard across Colmore's sides, waistband, and pockets, lingering longer than necessary. His forearm pressed into Colmore's upper back, using body weight to keep him pinned. "Spread your feet wider," Hargreaves ordered. "You don't get to control this." Colmore stayed silent. He knew every word was being recorded, his voice, the pressure, the imbalance of force. Body cameras were rolling, dash cams were running, and the laptop inside the car was still transmitting live. Hargreaves keyed his radio. "Dispatch. I've got one black male detained. Suspicious activity. Possible impersonation of a federal agent." Colmore turned his head slightly. "You're making a false report." "Don't move," Hargreaves snapped, tightening the cuffs another notch. "You're in no position to correct me." At that moment, the stop crossed a line that couldn't be walked back. This was no longer about suspicion. It was about control and the refusal to admit a mistake. And it was about to get worse. With Colmore still cuffed and pinned against the trunk, Hargreaves turned his attention back to the vehicle. He didn't ask for consent. He didn't state probable cause. He simply reached inside. "That equipment is federal property," Colmore warned, his voice steady despite the pressure on his back. "You are not authorized to touch it." Hargreaves lifted the laptop with one hand, careless, like it was nothing more than a prop in his narrative. "Looks expensive," he said. "You into surveillance now?" "It's not a claim," Colmore replied. "It's a fact you can verify with one phone call." Hargreaves ignored him and set the laptop on the trunk. Just inches from Colmore's head, the screen was still glowing, live feed still running, multiple camera angles, a warehouse entrance, a service door. "This looks like you were watching people," Hargreaves said. "Scrolling. I am assigned to watch a specific location." Colmore answered. "You are compromising a live federal operation." Hargreaves smirked. Funny how it's always some operation. In that moment, the surveillance target moved unnoticed by the officer. But clearly visible on the feed, he had no right to be viewing. The window of opportunity closed. The operation was compromised. Hargreaves didn't know it yet, but he had just crossed from misconduct into interference with a federal investigation, all while multiple cameras captured every second, and help was already on the way. Minutes later, another patrol unit pulled in behind the first. Officer Kyle Rennick stepped out. Early 30s, newer on the job, his body camera activated as he approached. Eyes moving from Colmore cuffed against the trunk to the laptop sitting open beside him. "What do we have?" Rennick asked. Hargreaves didn't hesitate. "Guy says he's FBI. Sitting in a dark car with cameras. Story doesn't add up." Rennick looked closer. The equipment, the feeds, the calm demeanor of the man in cuffs. "Sir," Rennick asked Colmore directly, "you showed him credentials." "They're in my jacket." Colmore replied, "I requested supervisor verification from the start." Before Rennick could respond, Hargreave cut in. He's been uncooperative. Kept reaching. Talking back. That's not accurate. Colmore said evenly. I have remained compliant. Rennick hesitated. He'd seen this dynamic before, the unspoken rule that junior officers don't contradict veterans on scene. He shifted his weight. Glanced at the cuffs. Then at Hargreave. Do you want me to run his name? Rennick asked. Not yet. Hargreave replied. I want to finish the search. Colmore exhaled slowly. This is being recorded, he said. Your body cams. My equipment. Everything you're doing is documented. Hargreave stepped closer. Good, he said. Then they'll see I treated you like any other suspicious subject. Except he hadn't, and Rennick knew it. But for the moment, he stayed silent, and silence became its own kind of decision. The radio crackled. Unit on scene. This is Lieutenant Marla Kieding. Hargreave straightened slightly. Pressing the button. Lieutenant, I've got a suspicious individual detained. Claims to be FBI. Vehicle loaded with surveillance equipment. I'm not convinced. There was a brief pause on the line. Have you run his name? Keating asked. No. Hargreave replied. Another pause, longer this time. Run it now. Keating said. And if there's no resistance, loosen the cuffs. Hargreave hesitated. He looked at Colmore, then at Rennick, then back at his radio. Copy. He walked toward his cruiser and entered the information into the mobile terminal. Name Darius Colmore. Agency Federal Bureau of Investigation. The seconds that followed stretched uncomfortably long. Rennick shifted his stance. Colmore remained still. Hands cuffed behind his back. Shoulders tight from the pressure. The laptop screen beside him continued to glow quietly, transmitting proof of everything happening. Then dispatch came back, not with casual confirmation, but with a measured, unmistakably serious tone. Unit. Stand by. The channel went silent. Hargreave stared at the screen in his cruiser. Jaw tightening. Moments later, the radio spoke again. Subject is confirmed. Federal Law Enforcement Officer. FBI. Active status. Rennick's eyes widened. Dispatch continued. Supervisor contact requested immediately. The story Hargreave had been telling himself collapsed in real time. This man wasn't pretending. He wasn't lying. And the mistake could no longer be ignored. Remove the cuffs. Lieutenant Keating ordered over the radio. Now. And stop searching the vehicle. Hargreave didn't respond right away. For a brief moment, he stood still, eyes fixed forward, jaw tight, as if weighing whether authority could still bend reality in his favor. Hargreave, Keating said again. Slower this time. That is a direct order. He turned back toward Colmore. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of error. He simply unlocked the cuffs. Colmore rolled his shoulders as the metal fell away. Red pressure marks circled his wrists. Already swelling, he stepped back from the trunk. Finally free to stand on his own. You fit the profile of someone running surveillance illegally. Hargreave muttered. Colmore looked him directly in the eye. The profile in your head, he said. Before Hargreave could respond, another voice cut through the radio traffic calm. Controlled. Unmistakably federal. This is Special Agent in charge, Ronan Ives. Who is the on-scene supervisor? Keating answered immediately. You have one of my agents detained. Ives said. His operation has been compromised. I'm en route with internal affairs and federal legal. The shift was instant. Hargreave's posture changed. Rennick took a step back. Preserve all body camera footage. Ives continued. Freeze incident logs. I want the name of the officer who initiated the stop. Keating answered without hesitation. Officer Caleb Hargrave. There was a brief silence. Do not allow him to leave the scene. Ives said, he is now part of an active investigation. For the first time that night, Hargrave asked a question. Am I being detained? Keating's answer was simple. Remain where you are. And just like that, the power he'd wielded minutes earlier no longer belonged to him. Within minutes, the scene transformed. 2 unmarked federal SUVs pulled in and positioned themselves around the stop. Marked supervisory units followed. Internal affairs arrived quietly, deliberately. Body cameras remained on. Dash cameras continued to record. This was no longer a traffic stop. It was an incident scene. Officers were separated. Hargrave was directed away from Colmore and from Rennick. Each was placed in a different patrol unit and told not to speak to one another. A medic approached Colmore and gently examined his wrists. Red marks. Swelling. Pressure injuries consistent with overly tight handcuffs. Everything was photographed, documented, logged. Special agent in charge, Ronan Ives, stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was calm, precise, and unsmiling. Which officer initiated physical contact, he asked. Lieutenant Keating pointed without hesitation. Officer Caleb Hargrave. Ives turned toward him. Badge number. Hargrave answered quietly this time. Ives listened as supervisors summarized the sequence. The refusal to verify credentials. The escalation. The search without probable cause. The interference with a federal operation, all captured on camera. When Rennick was questioned, he confirmed what the footage already showed. Colmore had identified himself early. He had requested supervisor verification, and Hargrave had chosen not to run the name until ordered. The laptop and surveillance equipment were examined by federal technicians to ensure no data had been compromised. The operation itself was officially logged as disrupted due to law enforcement interference. There was no arguing with the record. Because this time, everything had been seen. In the days that followed, the footage was reviewed not once, but repeatedly. Internal Affairs. The department's legal unit. Federal civil rights investigators. Every command, every hesitation, every word captured on camera. The findings were clear. Unlawful detention. Improper use of force. Failure to follow verification protocol. Unauthorized search. Interference with an active federal investigation. And a documented pattern of racial profiling supported by prior complaints. Officer Caleb Hargrave was placed on immediate administrative leave. His badge and firearm were surrendered pending review. Weeks later, the decision became final. Hargrave was terminated from the Aurora Police Department. His case was referred for potential federal civil rights violations. A civil lawsuit followed, citing unlawful detention and racial profiling. The career he had built over 15 years ended not with a dramatic chase, but with a body camera quietly recording what he chose to ignore. Officer Rennick remained on the force, assigned to additional training. Lieutenant Keating's actions were ruled appropriate once she was notified and intervened. As for Darius Colmore, he returned to duty. Same unit, same role, same record of service. The difference this time was simple. The stop didn't disappear into a report. The assumptions weren't protected by silence. And power didn't go unchecked. Because this time, the cameras were on. The verification was done. And the truth was impossible to look away from. If this story made you pause, share your thoughts in the comments. Like the video for accountability. And subscribe because the next case is already on camera.